I gave you 30 children and you are still looking for that woman? Pack your load. The next time I see you near her shop, I will show you pepper.
They say that a man who plants a tree for shade and then sits on it before it grows will never know what rest truly feels like. This is the story of Chukwuemeka, a man who had everything a man could want and still chose to throw it all away, chasing something that was never missing. This is the story of how a good woman was punished for what her body could not do, and how the man who punished her spent the rest of his life paying for it in ways he never saw coming. In the quiet town of Oguta in Imo State, there lived a couple that the whole street admired. Chukwuemeka was a carpenter who built the best chairs and beds in the whole market. He was tall, broad in the shoulder, and had a laugh that filled any room he walked into. His wife, Ada, was the kind of woman people described with their eyes full of warmth. She woke before the sun to tend the small garden behind their home. She cooked with care. She kept the compound clean. She greeted every neighbor by name. When they married, the whole of Oguta celebrated. Ada wore a red and gold wrapper that day. Chukwuemeka held her hand at the altar like a man who could not believe his luck. His mother cried from happiness. Her father prayed over them with both hands raised to the sky. The compound was full of music and laughter and jollof rice and cold Fanta. It was a good day. Everyone said so. Even the oldest woman on the street, who never smiled at anything, said this couple looked like they were made for each other. But that was the dream. The reality started arriving quietly in the second year, then louder in the third. Every Sunday after church, Chukwuemeka's mother would pull Ada aside. She would lower her voice just enough so that it still carried. She would say things like, "Ada, my daughter, when are you giving me a grandchild?" Every evening, Chukwuemeka's aunties would sit on the veranda and talk in voices that were meant to be heard. The compound is too quiet. A home without children is like a farm without rain. Ada pretended not to hear, but she heard everything. She heard it when she was cooking. She heard it when she was sweeping. She heard it in the silence that came after Chukwuemeka and she finished eating dinner and had nothing left to say to each other. She saw it in the way he looked at the children playing in the street outside their window. She saw the look on his face, that hollow, waiting look, like a man standing at a bus stop that never gets buses anymore. She had been to the hospital. She had done the tests. The doctor had spoken to her gently with a face full of careful words. He said her womb was there, but it was not cooperating. He said there were treatments. He said there was hope, but hope, Ada was beginning to learn, does not keep a mother-in-law quiet at Sunday gatherings. Chukwuemeka had heard the same doctor say the same words. He had nodded. He had held Ada's hand in the car on the way back home. He had said, "Do not worry, my wife. We will keep trying. God is not sleeping." That was what he said in year 3. By year 5, he had stopped saying it. Ada tried everything. She went to the big hospital in Owerri and spent the money they had saved for a new roof. She drank bitter herbs that a woman in the market said had helped 3 of her cousins. She prayed every morning before the sun came up, kneeling on the cold floor of their bedroom with her hands pressed together so hard her knuckles went pale. She fasted, she cried, she got up and tried again. And what did she get in return? More silence from Chukwuemeka, more loud whispers from his aunties, more Sundays that felt like a slow punishment. She stopped eating pepper, because someone said Pepe was the enemy of the womb. She stopped wearing tight wrappers. She stopped drinking cold water. She slept on her back for months because an old woman in the church told her that was how babies found their way. She sacrificed her comfort, her money, her peace, and her pride. And every time she gave something up, the demands only grew louder. Chukwuemeka's mother started visiting more often now, not to help, to inspect. She would walk through the house with her eyes moving from corner to corner, as if she was looking for the reason her son had no child yet, as if the answer was hiding behind the curtains. Ada kept giving, kept trying, kept smiling when she wanted to scream. But here is my question for you today, my people, and I want you to answer honestly in the comments. If you were Ada, what would you have done? Would you have stayed, or would you have packed your wrapper and walked away? Drop your answer below, and before you forget, please subscribe to this channel because the best part of this story has not even started yet. It was a Tuesday evening when Ada first saw it. She had gone to fetch water from the tap at the end of their street. She was tired, her back hurt. She had spent the whole day cleaning the house and cooking Chukwuemeka's favorite ofe onubu because she had heard somewhere that a happy husband prays harder for his wife. She was carrying the bucket on her head when she passed the home of their neighbor Ngozi. Ngozi was sitting outside on a low stool. She was eating fried plantains straight from the pan. Her wrapper was tied loosely. Her hair was not combed. She was laughing at something her daughter had said. Her compound was not perfectly swept. There were toys on the ground and a small pot that had boiled over on the fire. But Ngozi was laughing, a real laugh, the kind that comes from the belly. Ada stood there for a moment and looked at her. Ngozi had 4 children, a loud husband who traveled a lot, a small shop that did not always make profit. She had plenty of problems, but right now, in this moment, she was laughing like someone who had never heard of suffering. Ada walked home slowly. She set the bucket down. She sat on the edge of the bed. She looked at her hands. These hands had scrubbed, cooked, carried, kneeled and folded in prayer more times than she could count. She looked around the room. Everything was clean. Everything was in place. Everything was arranged perfectly. But the room felt like a waiting room. And for the first time, Ada asked herself a question she had been running from for 5 years. She whispered it quietly into the empty room. Who am I doing all of this for? It happened on a Thursday. Ada remembered it was Thursday because she had just come back from the women's fellowship at their church. The pastor's wife had spoken about patience that evening, about how a woman who waits on God will never be put to shame. Ada had sat in the front row and nodded along with everyone else. She had sung the closing song with her full chest. She had believed every word. She walked home feeling something close to peace. She opened the gate and she saw a woman sitting in her compound. The woman was young, maybe 23, maybe 24. She had a bright yellow blouse and her hair was freshly done. She was sitting on the good chair, the chair Chukwuemeka had built with his own hands and kept only for important guests. She was sitting on it like she owned it, like she had been sitting on it her whole life. Chukwuemeka was standing next to her. He did not look surprised to see Ada. That was the part that broke something deep inside her chest. He did not look nervous. He did not look sorry. He looked like a man who had already made a decision and was simply waiting for the announcement to finish. "Ada," he said, "this is Amaka. I have taken her as my second wife. The church has been informed. Her family has been visited. It is done." Ada stood at the gate with her Bible still in her hand. She did not shout. She did not cry. She looked at Amaka. Amaka looked back at her with eyes that were not cruel, but were not kind either. They were the eyes of a young woman who had been told a version of this story that made her the solution and Ada the problem. That night, Chukwuemeka said something that Ada would never forget for the rest of her life. He said, "Ada, I am not a punishment. I am a man who wants children. If your body cannot give me what I need, then I had to find someone who could. I did not do this to hurt you. I did this because I had no choice. No choice." Ada sat with those two words for a long time after he left the room. She thought about the money she had spent on hospital bills. She thought about the herbs and the fasting and the cold floor and the 5 years of kneeling in the dark. She thought about the roof they never fixed because she had used the money trying to give him what he wanted. She thought about Ngozi sitting outside laughing at nothing with her wrapper tied loosely. She made a decision that night. Not a loud decision, not a dramatic one. She did not pack a bag or slam a door. She simply decided something quietly inside herself, like a door closing gently but firmly with a soft click. She decided she was done shrinking. She was done arranging herself into the shape of someone else's comfort. She was done making herself smaller so that Chukwuemeka could feel bigger. She had given this marriage her hands, her money, her sleep, her tears, and her dignity. And he had taken a second wife to mock her in her own compound. She looked at the ceiling in the dark for a long time. Then she closed her eyes, not to sleep, to plan. Ada did not leave with noise. She left with a small bag, her Bible, and the little money she had quietly saved in the lining of her old church hat over the past 3 months. She went to stay with her aunt in Nnewi, a woman who had buried 2 husbands and raised 6 children alone, and still managed to laugh before breakfast every single morning. Her aunt did not ask too many questions. She simply made Ada a plate of hot apple and ofeaku, sat across from her at the small table and said, "Eat first, talk later. Everything heavy is lighter on a full stomach." Ada ate, then she talked, then she cried. Then she slept for 11 hours straight. That was the first real sleep she had gotten in 5 years. In the months that followed, something quiet happened to Ada. Not dramatic, not sudden, just slow and steady, like the way dawn replaces darkness without making any announcement. She started a small pepper soup business from her aunt's compound. It grew. She rented a little shop on the main road. It grew some more. She started smiling again. Not the careful smile she had worn in Oguta like a uniform. A real smile. The kind that reaches the eyes. And Chukwuemeka? Amaka gave him his first child within the year. Then another. Then another. They kept coming. 10, 15, 20. The compound that was once too quiet became so loud that the neighbors started closing their windows at night. 30 children, 30 school fees, 30 uniforms, 30 mouths, 30 report cards, 30 reasons to wake up tired every single morning. And still, the emptiness remained. Because the thing Chukwuemeka never understood was that his problem was never Ada's womb. His problem was inside him. A hole that children could not fill, that a second wife could not fix, that no number of sons or daughters could ever reach. He had mocked Ada for being empty, but he was the one walking around hollow all along. The tree he cut down for firewood was the only tree that ever gave him shade. My people, the lesson today is simple. Do not destroy what is loyal simply because it does not look like what you expected. Now, before we go, I want to pray for someone watching this right now. Maybe you are going through something heavy. Maybe people have laughed at you for something you cannot control. Maybe someone has replaced you and called it a solution. Receive this prayer today.
What was taken from you in shame will be returned to you in glory. The ones who mocked you are already living with the consequences. Your peace is your victory. If this story touched you, drop a comment below and tell me what Ada should have said to Chukwuemeka before she walked out. And if you are new here, please subscribe and like this video because part 2 of this story is coming and you do not want to miss what happened when Chukwuemeka showed up in Neri 20 years later looking for Ada.